We've made it to the Earth, now it's time to head to the beach on NES Works episode 172.
Anytime you need a straight man, just give me a call. I'll sit here and set this stuff up all night long.
Ultra Games is back with two last releases for 1989. You know, Ultra, Konami, but for Americans. True to form, this pair of Ultra titles brings a pair of computer games of American origins to the US console. Also true to form, neither of these were converted by American development studios. I've had a lot to say about the difficult road that European and Australian developers traveled on NES, namely how non-Japanese talent had a very late start working on the console due to the slow international rollout of the Famicom, and Nintendo's general sense of meh when it comes to bringing companies outside of Japan into its circle of trust. I've had less to say about how American developers have fared because, well, there haven't really been any American developers working on NES to this point. After Tengen made its debut in 1988 and quickly parlayed that presence into creating their own games outside of the Nintendo Circle of Trust, it took about a year and a half before the second US-based developer, Imagineering, finally set up camp on Nintendo's console. I know that revisionists and iconoclasts like to talk about how the Atari crash wasn't really a thing and people still kept making video games, but no, American game makers kept the hell away from consoles for a long time. Those companies mostly went bankrupt because of the Atari crash, and were scared as hell of that happening again. They had collective corporate PTSD. I mean, we'll see a few American studios as a sort of coda to NES Works 1989, but spoilers, they're all making unlicensed games too. This is a land of freedom, baby. We can't afford healthcare, but at least we don't meekly sign console publishing agreements, like the liberty-hating people of Australia? Anyway, this is an episode about Silent Service, so let's talk about that instead. Originally published on home computers in 1985, Silent Service sprang from the shockingly fertile mind of one Sid Meier, the decidedly American computer game design genius known for his deft hand at creating games with immense depth, carefully considered realism, and compulsive game design genius. Meier traded in political and military simulations pretty frequently, although that might be a side effect of the fact that Meier worked for Microprose. As the Digital Antiquarian has noted, Microprose was run by a veteran with a love for military simulations, which seems likely to have had an impact on the kinds of games that the company published, and therefore the kind of games that Meier designed. The important thing is that he was really good at it. And equally fortunate for Silent Service was the fact that military submarine simulators were very much in vogue in the mid-1980s. We can certainly attribute some of this to the 1984 publication of Tom Clancy's The Hunt for Red October, a potboiler about a rogue Soviet nuclear submarine, so grounded in military science that Clancy supposedly had to prove to the CIA that he constructed the story from declassified documents and not through espionage. I can't find any definitive confirmation that Red October directly inspired Meier to create Silent Service, but he did end up designing a game based on its sequel, Red Storm Rising, a few years later, so clearly these things did not exist in a vacuum. Whatever the case may be, Silent Service is not a thinly veiled adaptation of Red October, which is kind of a shame because it's a lot more compelling than the actual Red October game that eventually made its way to NES. For starters, this game is set during World War II, and it covers a broad range of scenarios, all of which involve using a submarine to sneak in and blow the hell out of enemy ships without being spotted. You have a lot of control over how you go about this. You have multiple views of sea charts that detail the whereabouts of the enemy fleet, and you can move at several different speeds at a variety of depths in order to make your approach and evade detection. The faster you move, the more noise your engine makes. The deeper you travel, the harder it is to be detected. But delve too deeply, and you can't use your periscope to keep tabs on the foe. You can launch torpedoes while running deep, or you can surface and fire on enemies with the deck gun. You need to balance silence and tactical advantages against the fact that running too long and too hard underwater will deplete your sub's batteries. Silent Service offers a ton of depth and gameplay options, and all through a simple, intuitive, varied interface. Rare did a startlingly good job of converting the game to the NES's hardware and controller. I wouldn't consider this an all-time classic for the console, But as computer sim conversions on NES go, Silent Service stands up there more or less with the Koei games. Fine work, Rare. Well, would you look at that? It's another American-created computer game adapted for NES by Ultra Games. In this case, though, the conversion really was handled by Ultra, or rather by Ultra's true self, Konami. And man, does it show. Again, I've been trying to walk a delicate line in recent NES Works episodes, as we've seen a marked uptick in NES software developed outside of Japan. For the most part, NES games developed in Japan tend to hold up a lot better than those that weren't. I mean, Japan still churned out its Tom Sawyers and Uncanny X-Men, don't get me wrong, but we just haven't seen a Western-developed NES game that hits the highs of the best Japanese-developed NES games. There are reasons for that, most of which have nothing to do with the actual skill of Western developers and a lot more to do with timing, access, and experience. Companies like Beam, Gremlin, and Rare had to go DIY and figure out the NES hardware on their own, and the console handled things pretty differently than the computers they were used to. But when a game like Kings of the Beach comes along, it's really hard to deny that however unfair the advantages held by studios like Konami over their overseas peers may have been, they made for some damn great games. Kings of the Beach emerged from the beach volleyball mania that gripped the US in the late 1980s, having originally debuted on home computers courtesy of Electronic Arts. Konami offers up an exceptional take on the game here. Rather than attempting to present a one-to-one recreation of the original, Konami instead adapts it to capture the essence of the PC title while feeling undeniably Konami. It looks like a Konami game with blank-faced characters that uphold the legacy of dudes like Simon Belmont and that Russian attack soldier. It sounds like a Konami game too, with fantastic music that incorporates some excellent sampled drums that give this port a rockin' beach vibe. The essence of the game comes through perfectly. Despite their faceless look, the in-game athletes have a ton of personality that reads through their little actions and reactions. Whiff a play and your athlete will kick sand in frustration. Ace the other team and your two players will give each other a jubilant high five. Even the crowd gets into the spirit of things. Maintain a lively volley for a while, and the audience will burst into cheers once one team finally manages to make a decisive play. The lively personality of the game complements its frothy, low-frustration gameplay. Beach volleyball isn't exactly the most complicated sport in the world to reproduce in video game form, since it's just two people per side rather than an entire team, but Kings of the Beach builds on the innate simplicity of the sport by sanding down the edges that can make 8-bit team sports titles so annoying. You only control a single athlete at a time, even if you're just playing solo against the CPU. The computer or another player controls the other person on your team. This allows you to remain focused on your own singular actions, rather than constantly juggling a cursor between active athletes and trying to predict when the control will swap and how your movement will be affected. It's a nice design choice. Kings of the Beach even goes a step further. Not only do you not have to fuss over multiple athletes, the computer handles a lot of fine maneuvering for you. When you move close to a point where the ball will land, the CPU will nudge your avatar into the correct position to make a play, and even scoot the ball slightly in its arc to come to you. Is it a realistic take on sports? No. Is it breezy fun? Yes. The downside of this is that you can sometimes become a little reliant on the computer to handle actions, especially when your partner operates under CPU control. Sometimes the computer will blow a play through no fault of your own, causing the other athlete to make a failed attempt to return the ball, or standing stupidly in place when the ball comes right toward him, evidently expecting you to dash up to his position and make the play for him. But it's fine, the computer bungles plays for the opposing side too, and it all becomes a moot point if you take advantage of Kings of the Beach's special feature: support for yet another new NES peripheral. This one, however, is actually good. Probably because it's an official first-party Nintendo-made product. The NES 4-score shipped at the very end of 1989 and introduced an exciting new feature to the console: support for 4-person simultaneous play. Nintendo did not invent this concept for consoles. The Atari 5200 shipped in 1982 with 4 controller ports built right into the machine. The NES did have one up on the 5200, well, several million up actually, which is to say it sold extremely well, whereas the 5200 flopped hard, just totally wiped out, ate dirt, belly flopped. The NES, on the other hand, had a huge install base, and that meant there was actually a real chance that its 4-player support would find an audience. And since it was an initiative supported by Nintendo themselves, the 4-score enjoyed significant marketing and promotion. There was even an entire special issue of Nintendo Power dedicated to the console's initial 4-player library. Technically, Kings of the Beach is not the first game we've seen to support the 4-score adapter. Championship Bowling allowed 4 people to play together, but that game's 4-player support felt pretty superfluous. Only one person can actually bowl at a time in a game like that, you know? So it may as well have used a pass-the-controller approach like Anticipation did. Kings of the Beach, on the other hand, makes meaningful use of the ability to plug 4 controllers into the NES at once. It's a 2-on-2 volleyball game, which equals 4 athletes, which equals 4 players. I have not actually played a 4-person session of Kings of the Beach, but I have to assume it's a pretty raucous affair. Kings of the Beach has a breezy, energetic style to it that makes it easy to fall into a rhythm. Serve, bump, set, spike, repeat until someone wins the point, with the CPU managing the fine details through its Snap 2 controls, letting you focus on the overall strategy. It's a brilliant take on volleyball. Of course, much of the credit here belongs to EA, who made a great volleyball title in the first place. But Konami were the ones who made it sing on NES. I've played a lot of sports games on NES, much to my regret. Kings of the Beach manages the rare feat of being a sports game that doesn't make me want to throw up a little bit. Then it goes a step beyond that to become one of the very few sports games I actively want to play. But don't take the excellence of this American game converted for NES in Japan as an indictment against Western studios. Most Japanese developers couldn't pull this off either. Kings of the Beach simply highlights the fact that when it came to NES, no one did it better than Konami. Or Ultra, I guess. Next time on NES Works, summer's just around the corner. Better start working on your daikini body.